Today's guest is someone I've been watching from a distance for years. Jess Smalley has spent nearly a decade inside the podcast trenches. She's produced huge shows like Two Doting Dads, helped build Mark Baressa's entire digital world, and quietly shaped more creators, founders, and storytellers than she'll ever admit. And now she's doing the scary thing, building her own brand from scratch, posting more, sharing what she knows, actually backing herself. If you've ever tried that, you know how cooked it can feel. This chat goes deep on how to build an audience without losing your mind, the real difference between content and storytelling, why pre-production is the cheat code nobody talks about, what makes someone a great podcast guest, how to self-produce without spiraling, and where Jess thinks podcasting is heading as AI gets louder. Also, if you want to stop drowning in your social media workflow, Sked Social is giving Scene listeners 50% off annual plans with the code SKEDBF50. That's SKEDBF50. Let's get into it. All right, Jess, thank you so much for joining us on the Scene podcast. My lip is looking a bit caterpillar-ish. I've just been to the dentist and I've been numbed up. So apologies if the clips from this podcast is me just looking a bit out of control. But Jess, welcome to the pod.
It's so nice to be here on the pod with you today, and I appreciate you inviting me on.
Well, you've got a nice little plant selection behind you. And we were just talking off air before that it's important to make sure when you're on video calls that it's looking good. And yours is looking good.
Yeah, the poor little guys need a bit of a feed. But yeah, I appreciate you seeing the fruits of my labour behind me.
Well, it's good to actually finally meet you because I know we've been LinkedIn friends for a couple of years now, and I've always loved your posts and, you know, being a fellow podcaster, seeing the different sorts of things that you're doing in your industry. But lately, I've just been seeing what you're up to and you're building something from scratch. So interested to hear your thoughts around the latest sort of career move for you and sort of what you're doing now.
Yeah, thank you for seeing that. I feel seen. I am very aware that we're living in very weird times, just in terms of the future of work, just in terms of how we show up online and show our skills. And I've been in the podcast industry for about 10 years, and the skills and knowledge that I have, and I don't really share a whole heap, but I know a whole heap. And so I've just decided that I too want to see if I can implement the knowledge that I have around audience building and put that into my own brand. Because you know, I have two missions at the moment. Can I do that for myself? And I want the industry, the podcast industry, to flourish. I'm no good if I don't share any of my knowledge. So put those two things together and then you have someone who's posting on Instagram a little bit more frequently. But yeah, you're referring to a post that I shared 24 hours ago, and it took me so long to make, and it shouldn't have. But what I'm realizing is that when you're doing your own stuff, you put things through so many filters. It definitely makes me sympathize with the people that I work with, because if you don't have that external voice, if you don't have that producer who's cheering you on, showing you the path forward, then you end up in this funny little loop until you actually decide to execute. And last night, I just decided to post the thing. And the exciting part about all of that is I've broken the seal. The responses have been really surprising. People are noticing. Interestingly, people want to learn more from me, which is a good sign. So I guess I better keep it up.
I love that. And it must feel so good to like experience. You can't buy that. And being in the podcast industry for that long, especially at this stage now where, yes, podcasting was around 10 plus years ago, but it wasn't like it is at this moment in time now. So for you to experience all the change that it's gone through and how, you know, best to distribute and best to promote and do all those sort of things with the podcast as well. But I'm interested to hear your perspective around like audience building and why you're sort of starting there first. You know, like obviously it's a lot different than, you know, just posting on behalf or producing on behalf of other people. But yeah, you doing it yourself and sort of getting into the zone that way. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, there is so much power in building an audience. Setting aside the transactional side of things, um, things are better in groups. Things are better in community. I want to share the knowledge that I have with other people, and I want to be able to help other people with their own work. Um, Someone who I take a lot of inspiration from is Adrian Purr. His handle is like OMG Adrian. And about 2 years ago, he posted a clip, and I'll share it with you immediately after this. He shared a clip about how he would post on TikTok for 365 days. And the reason why he dropped that is because he was sick of the sludge that was on TikTok at the time. People were jumping onto trends, forgetting who they were talking to, playing to the algorithm. And he, as a reaction to that, said, look, I'm a storyteller, I'm a creative storyteller. Here's what I'm going to do to push against what's happening on TikTok and Instagram. And so what he's done is he's ignited this audience and this movement around this idea that, we've forgotten why we actually exist on these platforms, which is to tell stories and to connect with other people. And so what he's done is built an audience around that mission. And I think that's inspired a lot of people to create and connect on a much larger scale. And that's something that I draw a lot of inspiration from and want to implement into my own knowledge space.
Let's go down the rabbit hole of AI and future industry trends now, because we were talking off air before and you're saying it's all about to change and it's about to happen. So I'd love for you to break down sort of where you think AI has a part in terms of podcasting and storytelling and things like that, and where do you sort of see the industry going?
Yeah, I mean, it's no different to what people are currently saying about AI and how they're using AI to improve their tasks, the amount of time it takes to do something. But the concern is that it's going to take away the human element in a lot of the creative industries. There was, I can't remember the name and I wish I did, but it put a lot of fear in the podcast industry because the company was basically using AI voices. Actually, not basically, it was just using AI voices. And I believe there were like thousands upon thousands of episodes. And the founder was just saying, I need to look it up. The founder was just saying that there is interest with these podcasts.
Yeah.
And of course, that sort of thing brings a lot of concern or a little bit of upset. Like whenever you talk about AI taking away the humanness of things, people are getting upset. And it brings into question, okay, what does this mean for the future of podcasting? Like, does that mean that people want to be listening to AI generated voices as opposed to people like you and I who stuff up all the time or say the wrong words because they sound like humans? And I'm unsure about how that'll influence our industry, but one thing I know for sure is that I, myself, engage with the human of podcasting. And personally, I don't believe that an AI-generated voice is podcasting. Because at the end of the day, a podcast is a human communicating with another human. Like you're having a conversation, whether it's parasocial or, the one that we're having right now, two-way, narrative-driven. Like this is a layered medium. You've got the human sharing their thoughts through a microphone, but then also who they are as they show up behind the mic and their meaning and their purpose and what got them to that position to sit behind the mic. All of these existential big human storytelling connection points is the reason why I listen to a podcast, not not an AI generated voice. Now that could work for news, like daily news, spitting out like 5-minute bullet points. But I would also argue that I too want to listen to a reporter who I can trust. That's the human. But bigger picture, like everybody else, no one knows what's going to happen in the next year, 3, 4, 5 years. All I know is that what makes this medium work is the human element. And as long as that thing is still around, then the podcast industry will flourish because of it. I just feel like, this is my hunch, it will create that moat around protecting creativity from AI taking over.
And then when you get something long form, where I feel like you used to maybe like the TV show segment where you get something for 15 minutes outside of what you do, now it's like, I don't know, when I see a guest and there's an hour and a half on someone that I'm interested in, I'm like, I'm all in. And I feel like it's like anything, like you care about people more when you know them. Like all those like Last Chance You and those Netflix series where you can really see behind the scenes and really get to know these people's stories. You're invested in them, even if you didn't really like the sport or art or whatever in the first place, because you care about them, kind of thing. And it's like, I saw that with the F1s, you know, like that Drive to Survive. Now all this like sudden attention, and it's because people relate to the human side.
And that's why you're seeing a huge trend with businesses and, you know, brands wanting to explore the podcast space and seeing it as an add-on to their marketing play, because everything is just saturated, right? Like we're looking at how to pull on this algorithm and this lever, and what happens is you lose authenticity, you lose the human element in something. But podcasting provides you that human connection, and that's why it's so attractive to brands at the moment who want to get into this space, because people buy from people, and podcasting is a way of like really stripping everything back and getting to your target audience.
I love that. And slightly off topic here, but like when you're seeing like guests and stuff roll through, like, do you notice the common traits of what make people kind of successful and things? Because in my mind, just thinking now, it's like, I remember after having Laura Henshaw on Funny Business, and then her comms was just crazy. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I can see how she got to where she did because of the way she is. You know what I mean? Like driven, like the comms and just how she made you feel. And I was like, no wonder why their community is really solid and they're doing such amazing things. It's like, have you noticed any sort of like traits with those types of people that you've managed to come across?
The guests who are going to do really well, like I can kind of, I've been doing this long enough to hear it in their voice, right? And that's how I can identify it. But what makes a really successful guest is someone who knows thyself. So they understand their weak points, they understand their strengths, and they can walk into any kind of environment and be their best selves. And they're not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to say the wrong thing either. But then there's also a performance element. Like, you really have to remember that I am, right now, I am talking to someone who has got me in their ears. And so many guests forget that. They end up crawling back inside their own head, and then everything that's coming out of their mouth becomes mash. And so you end up losing that connection, that the whole reason why you were actually appearing on the show. You've forgotten who's listening to you. So it is the Laura Henshaws who remember who they are speaking to, who know how to craft a story, who remind themselves that they are talking to one person rather than a crowd. Is very different to be speaking to one person than it is to be speaking to a crowd of people. Those are the people who perform really well in a podcast. But then also, you got to meet your guest halfway. Like the pre-production that is required from the podcast is what also sets you up for success. So there's so many layers to this, to making sure that the perfect environment happens.
I love that. Like, I think research is so good, and then listening on top of that research that you've done. Because I think it's hard, even as an interviewer. It's like, I've got these topics, I've got these questions, but if someone starts talking about something that they're genuinely interested in, or they're just telling different types of stories, it's like, oh, cool. Like, I see what lights them up if they mention it. Clearly, they want to talk about it. So it's like, let's sort of go down that path. It's like staying in the moment, and yeah, like you were saying, like you're in people's ears, but it's like you're having a conversation. Can you be too honest sometimes? Like if in podcasts where you're really open and vulnerable, because I feel like that's a big fear for a lot of people, where it's like, all right, if I go on these things, if I get asked these questions and stuff, like how do I go about it?
Look, what I say to everybody is, what do you want? How do you best serve the audience? Like, that is the sentence that you come back to. Everything that I'm saying on this podcast, everything that you're asking me, Lockie, is how do I best serve the listener? And if you keep that top of mind, sure, I might reveal to you that I've had an affair or something like that, which isn't true. Like, I'm not sharing anything right now that is truth. But like, if it serves the audience, then it has a purpose for being there. I don't think you can be too honest if you keep that top of mind. Because at the end of the day, if that is serving the audience, then you're doing the right thing by the podcast.
I love that. And what about on the opposite side of the spectrum? Say you've done a really good job on a podcast, you've crafted a really good story, and now all of a sudden other media outlets want to get you involved in things and want to feature you. Like, how do you go about making sure that you're, telling your story or shaping your story well, but also sort of giving new info? Or do you even give new info, or do you keep repeating that sort of story depending on sort of what stage you're at?
Keep repeating the story, but just change your context. I mean, you see this all the time when you're having to jump across different social media platforms. Like, I'm not going to say the story the same as what I'm going to say it on TikTok and LinkedIn. Like, you have to change for the sake of your audience. Let's just say I jump off this podcast and then I'm going to be asked the exact same things to a business-centered podcast. I would just be saying different things, different. I would pull from different examples to share the things that I've shared with you for the purpose of that. It all comes back to serving the audience. If you are finding yourself in this great opportunity where people are asking you to appear on Sunrise, or they're asking you to do a speaking event, you need to shift. You need to figure out who your audience is so that you can connect with them on a real level.
I love that. I think one for our audience, I think they'll like this one. Like, all right, you've got a podcast. How do you craft a podcast when, like, you've got clips on socials, yeah? So for us with this podcast, for example, we want promotion clips. We want things that are going to be sticky and things that, going to make people feel like they've got something else in their toolkit. So how do you structure up a podcast and a good conversation around extracting that value? Or do you even think about that when you're even having the combos? Or is it just post-production?
No, you have to. You really have to think about this stuff in the pre-production phase, like down to the very minute level. So what I do with the people that I work with is, okay, we have this episode coming up with Chris Hemsworth. He's barely spoken to. Rarely do we ever get any opportunities with this guy. I don't think I've ever seen him do a long-form podcast. What are the questions that we ask? Okay, how did we react when he responds in this certain way that we perceive that he might respond to? And that's just your brief. And then you just think about, okay, how are we going to promote this? If it's going to live on TikTok, if it's going to live on YouTube, what are the clips that we can extract from this conversation that we can predetermine could happen, most likely will happen, that we can put into YouTube and TikTok and wherever else you put the podcast clips. And so when you're walking into the podcast, you have all of this predetermined. You understand where you're going to take it. It could go in different ways, but you know how to bring it back so that you get the outcome that you're looking for. This all comes through training as well. Like, my God, you can't just achieve this out of one rep. You will, as a host, you will recognize these moments and think, okay, that's a really good clip moment. That guest was really animated then. It'll probably work well as a clip. I'm sure that you're thinking that same way while you're in the middle of this chat as well. It's like, okay, I like the way that Jess is doubling down on X, Y, and Z. Can I make her take it a step further? Can I pull her in a different direction so that we elevate the clip a little bit more? Because simultaneously, it'll elevate the conversation. At the end of the day, the clips that work really well are when the guest is really animated and they feel really strongly and confident about something, where they can tell the story in a really nice, neat way, because that stuff translates across social media.
That's a good tip. It reminds me of a story. I remember when we were lucky enough to be invited on the Today Show, and they told us, the producer was like, all right, these are the questions that they're going to ask. Like, just have something ready. So we rehearsed everything. We had it all sorted. And we're people who aren't that prepared. You know, we're pretty loosey-goosey. Like, we have sort of rough sort of stuff that we want to talk about. So for us, it was sort of playing outside our comfort zone. And I remember when we got on, the first couple of questions, all good, had it all down pat in my head. But I was so nervous. She asked a different question. I had no idea how to answer it. And it was funny. Like, it was so on brand for us. If people saw it, they'd laugh and be like, I get it, like, it's funny. But it's just interesting to see sometimes, like, knowing yourself as well, you know, and how you fit into these things. So I know for sure that having structure and systems and processes around that looseness, and I feel like the magic of it actually makes it scale and makes it better, you know.
And that is the power of having a producer. Like, you need someone who is implementing those structures, those processes, but then also to hold a mirror up to you and guide you in the right direction. Like, there's only so much conversation I can have in my own head before I realize that I'm not progressing in any kind of way, and then I sound a little bit crazy and I don't know which way is up or down. This is why you need a producer, because they can say to you, well, when you're silly around this particular question for the Today Show, that actually plays really well with the audience. They really like that. And then, you know, for next time, you're a little bit more confident when you're going into something that is a little bit loose, or when someone asks you a question that feels a little bit off-center, you know that your character and the way you show up to the previous question, the previous time that you showed up to that question, you'll be able to sort of sit in the moment a little bit more confidently.
Yeah.
I always say to people, like, it is such an existential crisis when you sit behind the mic. You can be the most confident person in the world, but as soon as someone puts a mic in front of your face, it can be a totally different ballpark. You end up, like, thinking about all these things. You could fall into the trap of filtering yourself too much, where you lose your personality. That's why you need a producer who can encourage you and say, it's okay to go down this path. It's okay to talk about this. Double down on that. Don't talk about this because it doesn't help you. You end up, like, floundering. We can work on that a little bit later.
That's such good, valuable tips for the audience there and myself. I'm just thinking now, it's like, I think people, you know me for having a podcast and expect me to be a really good public speaker. And for me, that's like my worst nightmare. Like, I'm happy to give things a crack. And I think sometimes, you know, I'm just ignorance is bliss and I just sort of go with it and see how things go. But I just think, like, constantly putting yourself outside your comfort zone, like doing hard things, like people on live TV, I'm always looking at that and going, how are they just so articulate and just know, you know, how to, like, structure up their words and the confidence. And it's just like repetition, like you were saying. You just got to put yourself out there. It's like all the hard work done behind the scenes that you don't see beforehand, or sometimes you do and you can appreciate the journey, but it's like it's not as easy as just sort of knowing the information and then just putting it out there. It's the feeling that you need to get yourself, hey, when you're in that position.
Lockie, if I was your producer, I would say to you, lean into that, right? Like that, from knowing you, what little I know from you is that you are a guy who doesn't want to have too much information before you walk into something, because I have a feeling it'll probably mess you up. And so as your producer, I could help you double down on that looseness and really lean into that, because it is part of your character and it is where you shine your best. Like, I know that we wouldn't perhaps put you into a situation that wouldn't serve that.
Yeah.
So it's environment building as well.
Yeah. And is that like taking the risk then around what is worth taking the risk? Like if it's not really in your environment, but you can see the value maybe if it were to go well, like when do you push the trigger on like risk taking in terms of putting yourself out there like that?
Oh, I'm always about risk taking. It's just knowing how you can play to your strengths in whatever environment. I think of Ash Wicks in this situation. So I worked for Two Doting Dads, which is a parenting comedy podcast.
Is it doting dads? I've been calling it dotting dads.
Oh,
I've
Two
not-
Doting Dads.
Yeah.
Um,
Crazy.
There you go. But I know with Ash, he's riddled with ADHD. Put it that way. He constantly talks about it, and because of his chemistry is like that, I cannot tell him anything in the lead up to something. I can only produce him along the way, like over long periods of time, right? And so I know I can't bombard him with information before he steps into something, because otherwise it'll just be too overwhelming for him. He needs to go in there with his gift of the gab and be able to make it his own. And then after the episode is recorded, we deconstruct it. We look at what worked, what didn't work, what he can double down on.
And how do you self-produce then? Like when you're working with other people and it's like, yeah, cool, but like knowing this stuff, and because I feel like we're always our worst critic, you know what I mean? Like, actually, I cut myself a bit of slack a lot of the time, but I feel like a lot of like successful, creative-driven people are pretty hard on themselves. So how do you have those convos in your head and still be confident and still improve?
It's so hard, isn't it? Because this is exactly what I'm going through at the moment. My partner is not in this space, but he just has gems all the time. He said, this is so humbling for you, because it's almost like you're basically starting from ground zero, building your own audience. And I'm sort of cursed with knowing what is good, and it's like walking into the gym. I know I can lift 20 kilos, but for some reason I'm lifting up 5. And I'm like, hold on a second. There's a disconnect here. What's going on? Why isn't it working how I've visualized in my head? But you just have to press before you're ready. Like, you have to go before you're ready, because it's not a feeling, it's a decision. You have to progress forward and then receive that feedback from other people. So that's what I'm experiencing right now, as I'm wanting to build my own audience. I know what good looks like, except my good doesn't look like that at the moment. And so I have to like strengthen that muscle right now and just put it out there. That's the issue. Like, if you can just press publish on whatever it is, then you can move on to the next thing. And then you can progress. That's the only way you can have that personal feedback. And I know that. I'm climbing Ick Mountain right now, and it's quite icky, but I know that once I get through this process, that's the only way I can get to the next stage. You can't self-produce, because you just end up in this silly little loop.
I think like one thing you're touching on there is like, I think positive momentum is addictive too. Like when you start to see stuff work, you're like, for me, that just gives me a big rush of, I just can't wait to do the next one. I just can't wait to do the next one and the next one. And all of a sudden it's 5 years, you know, and you're just like building that out because you're so obsessed. But it's like, yeah, I think it's like defining the goals at the start. Hey, like, what is success to me? Like, and I'm not someone who can see 5 years into the future. For me, I'm like tomorrow, today. It's like, hopefully if I live by my values or whatever, I'll sort of move in a good direction, and it's going to go in kind of that way, I think. But all the best sort of stuff just branches off. So I think like leaving room for opportunities too, hey, to just come in, because that's what I see when you're creating. It's like, it's never really what you put down on paper. It's assessing what comes to you and that decision at that time.
Yeah, yeah. You will make so much more headway if you just take action rather than thinking about it. And it is the most cliche thing, but once you do it yourself and you realize that that is the valuable step that you need to take, then the momentum will come.
How do you fix content that's not sticky, that's not working and stuff? How do you like look at that in terms of metrics and how to improve, and just your sort of breakdown on, you've put out a piece and it's not what you thought it would be?
Within the context of podcasting?
Yeah, just anything in general, just a creative outlet.
Within the context of podcasting, like we've all been there, we've all thought this is going to fucking kill. This is going to resonate with so many people, or the exact opposite. Why did that do so well? I don't understand. Like, I gave no thought for that. Like, I don't understand why that resonated. We were talking absolute fluff. But to answer your question around what do you do when something doesn't hit? Look, there are two things. You can either go back to the drawing board and change tact, or you can dissect it, which is like, okay, for example, a podcast not doing so well. Why didn't that work? What was the lead? How much preparation did we put into this? Usually it does come down to the preparation. What kind of headspace were we in the lead up during the recording? How did we feel afterwards? An indication of a really good episode is when you're walking away energized, like you don't feel drained. You feel like your brain is firing off 1,000 miles because the episode has stimulated you in such a way that will resonate with your audience. But sometimes you can walk away, a host can walk away feeling like, my God, I reckon I had to put in way more effort into that than the guest did. And that is a huge indicator into why it will probably not resonate. Because if it doesn't resonate with you, it won't resonate with the audience. What can you do? There's nothing you can do once it hits publish. But it does affect your trust with the audience. Like, they are giving up an hour of their time or 45 minutes of their time to listen to you. And if it doesn't hit, then you have an issue. You need to immediately make up for it in the next episode and put all your energy in the pre-production phase and making sure that you hit all the notes. I kind of see it as the same way as comedians do. You're going to have a shit gig. You just need to make sure that you get up the next night and kill it.
We'll clip that bad boy up. That was good content. Don't worry about that. You said that I was doing my research for this podcast, and
Music to my ears.
yeah, there you go. And that's not something that I'm really known for, as we were talking about earlier. But you said like growth starts earlier than distribution, which I love, because it's exactly what you're talking about now. It's just getting all that pre-production work done, thinking about it. Yeah, it's like being intentional. I think I like that word a lot, because it's just like, it means you're thinking about, like, strategically thinking about what you're doing, which I feel like it can be, you can get lost sometimes in the vanity metrics and different things. But what are you sort of looking at, when you're growing your audience? What are the metrics that you look for and look to learn from?
It comes down to your mission. Like, do you want to grow, or do you want to maintain your audience? Like, do you want, like, you can have a tiny audience and they can be mighty. But if you want to grow it, if you want to be the number one podcast in the world, much like Diary of a CEO's mission right now, they are optimizing like Mr. Beast optimizes for YouTube. Like they are thinking about the air quality in the room when they've got guests coming into the room. They're thinking about the playlist, the guest favorite playlist, like all these little tiny minutia things that they know affects that compound into the success of the show. So because they have ambitions of being the number one podcast in the world, they are thinking about these things on a minute level. Of course, like if you don't have the resources, then it's very difficult to execute something like that. But if you just want to build an authority within your space, and it seems like that's what you're trying to do, Lockie, with Scene. Numbers aren't a goal, it's an outcome for you. So you want to, of course, you want to make sure that this is the best possible podcast for your listeners. But let's just say it doesn't perform so well, but then next week's episode performs really well. You will look back on these episodes and say, okay, which one worked, which didn't work. What was the reaction to this episode that didn't on paper didn't do too well, but did we get reaction from this episode? Did I get DMs? What are all of these other little touch points that I received beyond the numbers that are an indicator that this resonated with a certain group of people that I'm trying to reach? You wouldn't be optimizing for numbers in that sense. So does that answer your question?
No, it does, honestly, because I feel like in the socials, in the pod world, it's like, what do you focus on, when you're growing? And I feel like, yeah, you got to know your audience. Hey, you got to know who you're speaking to. And, you don't really know how to improve or get better if no one's talking. So you got to have that sample size of testing and just seeing, what you're thinking. Will it work or will it won't? So, no, it's good. Yeah.
My way of simplifying all of this, because it can become too much, which is like, how do you best serve the audience? Every single action that you take, keep that question front of mind. How do I best serve the audience? With the thumbnail of the podcast episode that will live on YouTube, what is the thing that's going to best serve my audience, that will attract the right person that I'm looking for? That will enable them to click on the thing? What is the correct title that draws them in? You have to think about your audience front of mind every step of the way.
That's good advice. And honestly, this has been an amazing chat, Jess. Thanks so much for jumping on and sharing your wisdom. And honestly, can't wait to follow your journey over the next year or two. I feel like it looks like a pretty cool ride that you're about to go on.
Send me the good vibes.
Yeah, no, look, we'll be getting around all your stuff. So all your information, all the details will be in the show notes so people can go check it out. But honestly, been an amazing chat and thank you so much.
Thanks, Lockie. I really appreciate it.